Namaste. Welcome, Brand.
Namaste. I'm so thrilled to have this time with you, Deborah, and to speak with an Aussie during this time that we're all of us in lockdown around the world.
Yeah, that's right. It is such a privilege to be able to go direct with you on all things emotional healing, cellular healing. And for those who are watching, if you're meeting Brandon for the first time, I might go ahead and indulge myself with the introduction here, if you don't mind. I consider Brandon one of my teachers for over 20 years now, and how this work came to me initially was many years ago. I was having a physical experience that was quite uncomfortable, and a friend of mine said, look, I have this book, you have to read it. And she says, if you feel you're in resonance with it, then give me a call and I will be happy to guide you through one of these processes. So of course, enter
The old version of the journey of me 25 years ago.
And so this is obviously your book, Brandon. The Journey is the book that was given to me. And to be honest, I didn't even finish it before she got the call back. And I was, yes, we have to do this. And so just to give a little background, Brandon, this is your story predominantly around the healing of your tumor, which your diagnosis was of a tumor the size of a basketball. So we're not talking something quite small. This was a significant moment for you in your life. And it goes on to describe your journey through the healing process in 6.5 weeks without drugs or surgery to really get to the root cause and essence of this tumor. And it's not just that. There's much more in the book about your life's journey, which is very important actually for the time that we're in at the moment, this being recorded, during the global pandemic and our lockdown period. And so I wanted to begin just by asking you to speak to the nature of this healing. And what it seems to me is for all of us in healing, there's a set of conditions to which we respond to emotionally. Right? For your journey here, it was a tumor. For us at the moment, we have this pandemic. But to begin with your journey of how you have stepped through into what has been pioneering work, right, to take us into this innate healing essence that we all have access to. Yeah.
Well, obviously getting that diagnosis when I left the doctor's office, and I can just remember at that time, it was in 1992, and I just had gotten the worst kind of prognosis and then bought myself a month's worth of time. And I realized that even though I was a therapist in life and had been certified in so many aspects of integrative medicine and complementary medicine, and I was living, breathing, doing everything to make myself healthy and well. And I still ended up with this tumor, and I realized I was being invited by life to go someplace deeper, to get access to what is now called cell memories. And what we know about emotions and the cells, Deborah, is that when we feel a strong emotion, and a lot of people are going through this right now, where they've got a lot of pent-up emotion, and none of us were given a manual how to deal with that. And we're suddenly in lockdown with our family, with our kids, or in isolation. And all the emotions that are stored inside of our body and buried there, in our busy lives, we've avoided them and denied them and pretended that they didn't exist and swept them under the carpet. And so they're buried there inside of our bodies. And what science has found is that when you feel a strong emotion and you repress it, it releases a quantifiable biochemistry into your bloodstream, which will go to certain cell receptors and block them, rendering those cells incapable of communicating with the rest of the cells in the body. And if over time illness happens, of course it happens where the cells are blocked. And conversely, what's also known to be true is that when we feel our emotions very naturally, openly, and freely, like a child does, our cell receptors remain open. And when I had the tumor in 1992, I was aware of all the research going on in the field of cellular healing, and that what people who were doing the research at that time, and there was one man who was a great inspiration for me at that time, was Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided as a medical doctor, he was chief surgeon general from one of the hospitals in Boston, and he decided he would do a radical thing. He would amass case studies of people who had healed without drugs or surgery. Now, the reason he did this is because in the complementary medical field that I was in, and also in the orthodox medical field, we'd all been trained the same way. Look at the symptoms that lead to ill health, that lead to death. So we were all focused. What makes people fail? But Chopra said, we know enough about what leads people to death. I want to know what makes them heal against the odds. And so he amassed all these case studies, hundreds originally, and then thousands ultimately. And he found that people who had healed without drugs or surgery had two qualities in common. One was that through some act of grace or spontaneous event, they actually got access to this that he called the phantom cell memories. And what we know about the cells in our bodies is that our cells are all replicating at varying speeds. So for instance, if you've ever had a suntan, you've noticed that your suntan faded in about 3 weeks' time. And that's because the old cells sloughed off and were replaced by regenerative cells. And then, if you have liver cells, for instance, that all gets replaced within 6 weeks' time. Stomach lining, less than 3 days. And the one that blows my mind are the eye cells, because they feel so firm, don't they? And in less than 2 days, in less than 48 hours, you will have an all-new inner eyeball. And this was so inconceivable for me at the time to even contemplate how that is even possible, except my mom had an eye operation during that time. And it's that common one where they slit the eye open, insert a lens, put the flap back, and put a patch on. And only a day and a half later, they took the patch off. They took it off, and she could see clearly. As a matter of fact, there won't be a single molecule in your body a year from now that's here today. But Chopra asked at that time a question no one else was asking. And he said, well, if that's true, that the cells are constantly replicating in new regenerative cells, why is it when you look at a liver that's riddled with cancer in January, why would it be riddled with cancer in June? And good question to ask, yeah? Right. And when postulated at that time, which has subsequently been verified by scientists all around the world, is that stored inside the degenerative cell are these old repressed cell memories where you were in a state of something happening, some trauma happened, some issue that you didn't want to face, and you shut down, and that biochemistry was released. And not only was the emotion stored and programmed into that cell, but actually the memory of what happened to you at that time got stored inside that cell. And before that degenerative cell died, it passed on its consciousness and its cell memory to the next cell generation. So the next cell generation was born as an absolute replica of the previous cell. And this programming just got passed down through time. As a matter of fact, when I went to my doctor, she said, this probably started when you were 8 years old. There's just one cell. And it replicated as 2 cells. And then towards the end, in the weeks and months leading up to going to this surgeon, it had gone from just slowly replicating to becoming quite aggressive. And the cells were replicating exponentially, which is why I ended up with this basketball-sized tumor by the time I could get in to finally get an appointment to see this surgeon. And so I realized that even though I knew all the research going on there, I'd seen the case studies, no one had given us a method. How do you get to these cell memories that are stored inside of our bodies and somehow go through a process of release and letting go ultimately, in my case, forgiveness, so that when new cells were born, they were born devoid of that old programming as new regenerative cells. And that was the huge, huge gift during that time where I was invited into the unknown. And I had to kind of throw away everything I knew in this field about healing, and be invited into this that hasn't been discovered yet. And as you said, what happened, and I do feel it was a download from grace, is that I found a way for all of us to undergo our own healing journeys in a very practical, guided way that everyone from all walks of life can do, where you can go on a journey inside your body and get access, go to different areas of your body where the cells are blocked, and get access to the old cell memories there, the old emotions that are stored there, and go through a very radical and very deep process of releasing and letting go and understanding what's happened to you, ultimately forgiveness, so that when new cells are born, they're born free from that old consciousness as new regenerative cells. And you may not know this, Deborah, but I'm right now on the board of 2 different hospitals in Israel, where I'm working with oncologists, medical doctors who work with cancer, as well as heart specialists. And what people do is they go, let's say they go through heart surgery, and after their heart surgery, they then go into a recovery part of the hospital where people are undergoing the journey work to uncover what was the emotional corollary to their illness, to come to a place of wholeness so that it doesn't show up again further down the line. And part of what I feel, and any of us, when we get these wake-up calls, that they're an invitation from our soul to meet and clear and face what it is our soul wants us to face. And so I have loved working in this field of the integrative medical field with the medical doctors. Just last spring, I was in Israel, and oncologists from all around the world had flown in from America, Canada, and all over Europe. And, you know, I was the keynote speaker speaking about the emotional impact that and corollary that our emotions have with our physical illness, both from a medical point of view and from a spiritual point of view. And it's just a wondrous time we live in, Deborah, that the medical field is opening up to recognizing there's many contributory factors. And I'm so grateful. You know, the Center for Disease Control, so CDC, you're seeing it all over the news every day. And what they have on their website is that 85% of all illness has an emotional basis. And the reason they can say this is because of all the research going on in the field of cellular healing. So it is a wondrous time that we live in, that people are being invited to participate in their own healing journeys. And coronavirus has given us this time to invest in ourselves, you know, this lockdown where we can take time to clear whatever blocks we have, or emotional shutdowns or limitations that we've got.
And I think what was interesting, I listened to an interview of yours the other day, and you likened it to, I'll use this example, but like, so you go on a holiday to relax, and so you stop, and then as soon as you stop, maybe some people get sick or have a cold and flu like symptoms, like in that stopping that this relief happens. And that's been coming up for me, that we've been go, 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 and all of a sudden the world has had to stop. And so I guess my next invitation or question is the nature of, okay, well, whatever is unresolved has the potential to come up. And it seems to me to be twofold. One might be that the external situation of the virus has triggered an experience of fear or panic or anxiety. And I imagine that then triggers all of those other times that we haven't cleared that. So it could, I mean, it certainly is big, there's no discounting that, but I wonder how much of what we already have is now impacting our response to to what is at the moment when it becomes
Yes,
heightened. Mm.
I do feel, to speak to the first thing that you said, is a lot of people are feeling triggered right now. And not only that, but they've been furloughed or laid off.
Mm.
They don't know where their next paycheck is going to come from. They are in the house and suddenly they're homeschooling and their children are feeling trapped and restless and angry and tempers are flying. They're also fearful. And here in Europe, which is where I'm calling in from, is, you know, coronavirus is much more prevalent than it is there in Australia. And, you know, I have a staff member of mine who is in Spain, and, you know, she just wakes up in the morning with this anxiety because obviously we're not allowed to travel anywhere. I'm in police enforced lockdown where even just to leave the house for a walk, I have to get a code from the police to be able to go for a walk. I even got arrested the first day I went out, you know, and Gabby and I drove down to the beach and we had a code for walking. It was the very first day that we went into police enforced lockdown, and the lights going, stop walking, what are you doing, turn your cameras off. And I was shooting a video because I've been shooting a video every day with work to give to people, and meditations, process work, yoga, nutritional support. And I was giving a video on exercise that you can do during lockdown. And we pulled up and we said, we have our code. And he looked at it and he said, well, first of all, this is for the supermarket. Of course, it's in Greek, so we don't know what it says, you know. And he said, secondly, you're not allowed to drive and go for a walk. You've come here with your car. You need to walk from your house if you're going to go for a walk. And I said, well, our house is 1.7 kilometers up the hill, you know, and it's a steep hill to get down here to the beach. And he said, sorry, you know, you get straight back in your car and go straight back home. And this is a warning this time. Next time it won't be, you know. So this kind of stress is happening all over Europe. And my beloved staff member, she has both of her parents are elderly and they have underlying conditions. And even though she's undergone the journey work, you know, she wakes up in the morning with this anxiety of not only just having to homeschool her daughter, but the anxiety, you know, that her husband, his business like ours, I'm not doing seminars anymore, you know, because I'm in complete lockdown, and I have been for 5 weeks, come tomorrow. And so, you know, all my seminars, which is our bread and butter, of course, a seminar business, and I gave one every week and was supposed to give one every week, they've all been shut down. And so, you know, people have very real fears that are coming up, not just the buried stuff that they brought in with them, but actual circumstances that are happening on the outside that are triggering these fears. And so I ended up doing one of the videos that I shot, and I really want to welcome everybody who's watching this, both from, you know, we'll be posting it on our Facebook and YouTube and you know, all the Instagram, everything. But anyone who's watching from your end, that one of the things I've made an offer of, and this is, I've done now 26 videos, where I'm not just giving teaching like we're doing right now, but actual process work. That is practical work that is being used around the world in the 39 countries that I give the journey in, and that's translated 24 languages. And so I want to give people the tools. And so, for instance, one of the videos I shot was how to come to completion with your loved ones during lockdown, because that's important, that even though she can't see her parents, and if something were to happen to them, if they were to get corona, she wouldn't be allowed to go to the funeral, you know. And so people are facing very real issues. And so for me, it's been extremely important to give this practical work to people to meet their worst fears. and get to the bottom of it. Because in the core of any emotion, as you know this so well, Deborah, is if you really open with any emotion and really allow it and embrace it, you will go down through layers and layers of emotions and eventually open into a deep well of peace inside yourself, a love that's omnipresent everywhere. And it's at this level of the infinite intelligence that the real healing can occur. And that's why I'm inviting people to get on my Facebook, to get on my website. And I'm actually, you know, that book that you showed, The Journey, if you get on my website, thejourney.com, we've made an abbreviated version of that book that you can, if you join the website, download for free. And you can also get the latest up-to-the-minute process work so that if you feel inclined, you can either get a process from a journey practitioner, and there are loads of them all over the world and also in Australia.
Yes.
And or you can partner with a friend and download it, print it out, and do the work. Or you can get online with me, and I'll even walk you through some of the process work. And so I just really want people to use this time as a time to invest in it themselves, to clear what their souls are here to clear, and to learn to befriend their bodies, to befriend their emotions. Because one of the things, repressing our emotions, and we're all pent up at this time, and being triggered by external circumstances and internal cell memories, as you said, that none of us were given the manual how to deal with that. And that's why I feel that life has given us an invitation to slow down, to stop the hustle and bustle, as you said, and the constant consumerism, and just let our lives wind down for a bit.
Yeah.
And take a half hour to an hour a day to go inside and get to know yourself, use it as healing time. And you do a lot of yoga, don't you? And you're quite well known in this area. And I'm sure you have some words of wisdom about using yoga during this time.
Yeah, and I think it's like what I love about, the twofold practices together is, to have a conversation with our bodies is also important, and to become a good feeler, to be able to meet these stored emotions. I think our yoga practices help us to get into some of that physically. But what I love about the journey method, or the process work, is, and if you're hearing this for the first time, it might seem like, really, but it's gentle. And if we were to say to people, go into the core of that fear, or go into the core of that anger, I mean, most people would be like, hell no, I don't want to go anywhere near that. But I mean, I was so taken with the beauty of this process work, that I did go on, for those listening, to complete the practitioner's program with Brandon, because for myself, because it was such a, as you often say, it's a homecoming. And there was a way in which, there was an initial need of, I want to fix something, or I want to look at something, but that soon enough fell away. And it was like being able to read this book of my life, or my lifetimes, to step into more of who I am. And I think that's where I mentioned to you right before we started the interview, is like this homecoming that keeps revealing, and what's coming up for a lot of people right now, in light of not having the work that they're used to, being laid off, is, well, maybe that job won't come back again. But I also feel this process work can help dial us into a potential that's calling us there to come forward with some other creative pursuit, or maybe the revelation of a new way of working. And that's really exciting to me at the moment. And I'd love you to speak to, I know it's in your book, I actually bookmarked it here. I know, it's like my Bible. It was after, and I won't be a spoiler for the whole story, but there was a time where after the tumor, Brandon had a further series of events that happened personally that were quite traumatic, and more layers of the onion being peeled away. And after one of them, you turn to see a fridge magnet.
Yes.
Like the fridge magnet that's always on your fridge, but you don't really read it or notice it until you really need to read it and notice it, you know. And I want to read what that said because it feels so poignant for our world right now. So the magnet said, know whatever comes to you unexpected to be a gift from God, which will surely serve you if you use it to its fullest. It is only that which you strive for out of your imagination that gives you trouble.
That's during that time that you're speaking about. It was a remarkable, set of catastrophic events that happened, and that quote had such an impact on me at that time because, as you know, I went from having this basketball-sized tumor, and the next year in the same month, they had those mega fires in Malibu, and we had a little tiny beach cottage on the beach of Malibu, and we weren't in Malibu at the time that the fires were, and our entire house burnt down, and we were the only house on the beach that burnt down, and our 2 cars exploded, and we were financially wiped out. Then the next year, my husband of 20 years came to me, same month, and told me that he had fallen in love with a younger woman and spoken to her about marriage. And it was after getting those words, I remember stepping out into my living room, and I just began to free fall in abject terror. It's like everything that had seemed so solid, that had seemed like this is who I am, this is my life, and it appeared like a big mountain in front of me that seemed so solid, and it was almost as if life itself was shaking the foundations of who I think I am. And I began to feel like this mountain was crumbling and falling into dust, and I began to free fall in just abject terror. And every time I was reaching, like who am I if I'm not all of these things, and I'm not a wife, and I can't even put food on my table, and don't have a livelihood, and even my house burned down with no insurance, and it was just, I was free falling in terror. And then I became aware of what I was free falling in, and that there was this vast embrace of love holding me in itself. And as I stood there, I realized I had been carried through all of these catastrophes by some invisible presence that was embracing me now. And it was then that I marched up the steps and went into my kitchen and saw this magnet that had never even touched me before. But when I looked at the words, it's like they went straight in. Know whatever comes unexpected to be a gift from God. And it will surely serve you if you use it to its fullest. It's only this that we strive for out of our own imagination, our own ego, that gives us trouble. Now, of course, I didn't have a clue what could be the gift in all of this falling away, a crumbling away of me and my life, of what I thought my life was. But my heart, it had a certain knowing that if I trusted, somehow the gift would be revealed in time. And I can remember that during that time where everything had fallen away, it was like I was, like we are all now, in some sort of chrysalis, where it was a time where everything had been stripped from me. And I ended up opening into this huge creative potential, which gave rise to the journey. gave rise to this that is my calling in life. And my whole life that had been ended up falling away. And this work that I have been, birthing for the last 26 years, and that is being used all over the world by people from all walks of life, this work is birthed itself from that period of incubation and hibernation. And so, yes, it is an invitation. Life is giving us this invitation. And it's an invitation to all of us to open into that creative divine potential. But my own experience was you don't open into that until you make that decision. Yes. To genuinely surrender to what is. And what I'm grateful about is all this work that I did during that time that eventually led to the birthing of the journey. And successively over the years, of course, it's expanded, deepened, and into all different areas of life where, yes, now I'm working with medical doctors and with psychiatrists and humanitarian work around the world. And of course, with people of all walks of life doing all kinds of process work that was born from this gestation period and then expanded over time. And it's why I feel that you are so right, that I don't actually believe that life is going to go back to the way it was prior to this time. I feel like a deeper invitation is being made to all of us to open into the possibilities, maybe live a more conscious life, a life more in alignment with what our heart most wants us to do. And maybe a deeper inner listening, more conscious of our loved ones, spending this time to recognize how blessed we are if we have loved ones in our lives. Yeah. How lucky we are to go out in nature. I mean, it's a wonder what's happening with nature around the world and how clear the skies are. And you can see the Himalayas for the first time in 30 years from India. There's always been so much pollution, you couldn't see it. And that, nature is venturing into the towns and the wild animals. And it feels like it's almost as if life is saying, yes, yes, yes. A new way forward is being called for. And I do feel that we're at a portal. And how we walk through this portal, this door, will be whether we drag all of our old ways and perhaps unconscious ways of being through this doorway, or maybe we learn from this time period. And we learn what's meaningful and valuable and really focus on that. And maybe we bring what is genuinely fulfilling to us. Maybe our lives are a bit more simple. Maybe there is less busyness for the sake of busyness and more time spent in nature and with our loved ones, and yes, making dinners at home. One of the videos I did in the kitchen, and I was showing people how to have superfoods to make themselves vibrant. But I was also sharing that I'm in rural Greece here in the Peloponnese, and I've not been able to get gluten-free bread. And so suddenly every other day, literally every 2 days, I'm making a loaf of quinoa chia bread, and it's wonderful. Have fresh bread and the smell of that baking in your house, and be able to get vibrant fruits and vegetables. And okay, maybe people aren't able to get pasta so much or rice so much, but maybe they start cooking things that are less starchy and more healthy for you. And so it feels like on all levels, life is inviting us into a more enlightened way of being.
And I love seeing, I mean, this in my area, in the yoga world. I mean, when we aren't able to go out so much, or we're not exhausting our bodies through, you know, everyday busyness, it's beautiful to see people being creative in the way they're moving their bodies at home, and treating this as a necessity now that potentially, you know, it wasn't before. So I do see the beautiful balance that's available here. And you know, and what I do from my heart really want to share with anyone, everyone who's listening, that Brandon's process work is very, very friendly, achievable, simple, beautiful. I actually did today, I laid on my bed and listened to your DNA clearing. And it's a beautiful one that addresses our ancestors, and I'm sure the memories in our cells are from ancestors who have lived through pandemics and famine, and I wonder how much of that is being re-experienced through us. And so I found that to be a really powerful process today. I felt so relaxed, I laid so still, and it felt like I was being freed, you know, all in 30 minutes. Right. And so I know, and the reason I reached out to you, Brandon, for this interview is so many people are sharing with me their emotional challenges at the moment, and we need tools. We need tools that work, that are proven to work, that are easy for us to access. So I see them all posted on your Facebook, and I will put the link to the section on the Journey website that is reaching out, and that's where you've got all of those wonderful videos and different techniques, whether it's working with fear. And I think what you're doing is so incredible, and I mean, I've been a fan for a long time, but I love seeing how it's coming up so freshly now. And this,
Yes.
right, in such a bite-sized way that today, okay, fear's really here for me, so I'm going to work with that today. And so I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for the work that you do, and for the willingness to be a example of what it is to live in a surrendered way. You know, I feel that's your journey. And so much of, for those of you who read the book, you know, when you started the journey from those meager startings, you know, you were sleeping on friends' couches, you know, and it's like, if anyone hears this, that something so globally magnificent could come from that, you know. And I took that as such a wow, you know, what could life pull through me if I let it, you know, if I really do not know for a second, if I don't know, and just let this turning in be the way. And so I'm so grateful for your tools, and they work. And certainly the more of us participating in them, sharing with our loved ones, with our children, I think that's really going to help us move more quickly, you know, and
You
in a
know,
kind.
Deborah, I wanted you to know one other thing. Sharon Turton, who
Yes.
has written 2 books on using the journey work with your children, and has developed all of our children's programs, from the little ones to the teenagers to the young adults. And she gave 2 different videos, because I was just getting one message after another. I'm homeschooling, I'm going out of my mind. So she did one video for the parents and work they can do on themselves, and one video for the children and the work that they can undergo. And you're right, it's a time that's pulling the best from all of us. And like you, I feel this, you know, this is a time where I'm just saying, life, use me to serve in the healing that our world needs at this time. And so it's all free of charge. It's all practical, and it's all work that you can use. And I'm so glad that you added in that it's work that's gentle, easy, it's user-friendly, and you're worth it.
You're worth
You deserve to come home to a sense of being at home in your own skin and finding some peace in the face of all the chaos that's going on right now. And so I thank you with all my heart, Deborah. It's been beautiful chatting with you, and I'm aware as I'm doing this that I feel that deep connection with Australia, and where so many of my dear, dear beloveds are. And I just pray that you'll share this with everyone you know.
Mm-hmm.
Share the links, this work that normally they would go to a seminar to get. I'm just giving it away, and I just pray that people use it.
Yes.
Wisely and well.
100. It's so incredible. From my heart to yours, so much gratitude. Such a privilege to have you as a guide in my life, and maybe through today's conversation that you are able to help even more people navigate this time. So thank you, Brandon. So much love.
Thank you with all my heart.